Emily here. Welcome. I'm going to pull my notes up here so that I stay focused and in sync with what I'm talking about today. Today's question, I was going to figure out how to do a poll, but let's keep things simple and just answer in the comments. How do you feel about the "what do you do" question? So we hear this question when we are introduced to each other, right? You're at a party, someone walks up to someone else in a circle and say, "Hey, this is so-and-so. She's a firefighter. She's a pastor. She does this." Or maybe you say something a little bit different about it. Maybe, you're more inventive and descriptive of who you are, because you're more than what you do. But in today's culture, it's this quick way to explain, who are you in a split second? Who are you in 10 seconds, right? And so we just quickly answer what we do. And it's this code that we go to, which is fine when that fits perfectly around what you do and who you are. And you're like, oh, you're about this. You're about, I'm a sales clerk at a clothing store. Oh, cool. What kind of clothes? What do you like about it, right? But what if you're not proud of what you do? What if what you do is just an end to a means? It's a paycheck. Or what if you're in transition and you're not sure what you do yet? How do you answer that? And I've been there lots in all kinds of scenarios. And so that's what I want to walk through today. How can you answer that confidently instead of apologetically, instead of feeling embarrassed, instead of just kind of like getting through the question and then hopefully redirecting the conversation? How do you get clear and confident about that so you can just feel good about it and not even feel good about it? How do you do that so someone's eyes pop open a little bit and they lean in because they're interested in more, and they say, "Oh, wow, that's interesting. Tell me more about that." So how do you feel about doing that? And so in the comments, if you're watching this now or the replay, I would love to know, on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being, I hope no one ever asks me this question until I figure this all out, or 10 being, I know what I'm all about, I know what I say, and I feel good about it. What is your number on that scale of how confident and feel goodish you feel about answering, "What do you do?" And so type your number, and then I also want to hear what is your answer. So if you're confident, or if you're not confident, what's the answer you pull out the question? What's the easiest retrieval that you have? So I want to read those in the comments. If I don't answer now, then I will answer later, because I don't always know if I can see the comments. So let's go on. And let me know how you're doing today. So most people, when they answer that question, and I can relate to this, especially in my 20s. So I have to go back and count how many jobs I had when I was in my 20s. It's probably somewhere between 6 and 8 jobs that I had in my 20s. And you could say, how you want to answer that is fine. Whether it's an internship and you didn't get paid, whether only paid jobs, whether it was a volunteer position, but you owned that thing and that was just part of who you were too, right? How you answer that is different. So I would say 6 to 8 of those jobs that I had. And they ranged from doing home care for some special needs foster children. I did that for 2 years. Then when I moved away, I did some mission work on a ship for 5 months. And what else did I do? I did housekeeping. Then I went into housekeeping supervisor. You can actually read more about that in my Dare to Decide book. I have a little snippet of why I became housekeeping supervisor. Then I moved on and tried painting for a couple weeks. I did a bit more housekeeping. I did some volunteer administration work, which I actually loved, and that ended up turning into my dream job at a church, part of a meaningful organization, and I was so excited, and it was problem solving. And then I got used to it. I was still loving where I worked, and it was still challenging, but at the same time, I would get bored. And so, of course, when you ask what do you do, people would mean, where do you work, or what do you do for work? And so, I was kind of shy and timid, and I would just pull the quick answer. Oh, I'm a housekeeper. And so that's the first thing we do when we answer that question, is we typically go to task or role. And let me know in the comments, which one do you lean towards, task or role? So task would be, I'm a housekeeper at a hotel. That was in Banff. I was a housekeeper for a hotel in Banff. And, or other times, it was 2 weeks I did this painting job in the summer. And it was pretty brutal, but I learned the proper way to take care of painting tools. So there's that. Right? So it's like, oh, I paint houses. But I'm like, it's not really what I want to do. I don't really want to stick on this conversation. When I moved into, say, administration, that's where I started out for a job that I had for years and years and years. And, that was fine answering, I do administration, or I'm an administrative assistant at my church. And so I would answer the task or the roles. Oh, I help with the church bulletin and reception and some data entry at the church, right? I would talk about the tasks. Well, a few years into that, and I began to own that role, but also want to be more challenged. I wanted to spread my wings, but I had these things that held me back. Oh, I'm not as credentialed as someone else. Oh, I'm not, this is just my job description. I don't have permission to do more. This isn't on my job description. And so, but I would start embodying roles a little bit differently, right? How one person would do an administrative role was different in how I might approach it. I would go in and dig deep and try and solve it and make a system better, or I would see things that someone else might miss. And so I would, dig in and tiptoe around, but I wasn't very assertive in pushing myself forward. I was, I considered myself low on the totem pole of, the team, so to speak. And then I carried that. That's how I saw it. So that's how I carried myself. So then that's how I asserted myself, which was not really asserting myself. So what happened years into that when I wanted to know, okay, I want to explore this. I would like to do this, but this part of my job description is still mine. They're not going to hire someone else for it. They're not going to delegate that at some point. But, I'm bored. How do I expand this? And so I had to move from beyond task and role to something, how do I make this feel more fulfilling? Because at that time it was all consuming in my life. I owned it. I loved it. I worked there. I volunteered there. It was part of my family. It was my support system. And so it was all these things. So I had to figure out, if I'm wondering what my sense of value is here, that it's just this position here and this is my role and it's just the list of all the tasks I do, but to me it was more than that. What do I do? And so I had to come up with a different one. And along this, I had done some purpose discovery work to figure out, how do I describe my purpose? So at the time I had a purpose statement, but it wasn't what I would answer the question, what do you do? So my purpose statement, as I looked through all of the things that I love doing, my strengths, the things that I'm drawn to, I boiled down to this broad statement of, I serve God, or I glorify God by serving and helping and encouraging others. It was variations of that statement. And to this day, I could say that would be my mission, that could be my purpose statement, but it was very broad and it didn't give me any confidence in answering, in streamlining my life or my focus or answering the, well, what do you do question. People would just kind of give me a blank stare if I actually used it, saying, okay, well, what do you do, right? Like that doesn't tell them anything. And so how do you find clarity in this? Well, I moved to a mission, a statement around my mission. And so a mission is, it could be I help, and the kind of people that I'm drawn to help. So I help this kind of person do or find or solve or discover or experience something. And it becomes, what is the greater purpose behind the tasks and the role that I'm doing? And so because I was part of a church or an organization that was about, it wasn't about entertainment, it was about spiritual growth. It was about leading people closer to a hope and feeling loved and valued and experiencing that, growth and maturity in Jesus Christ. And so that was the team, that was what we were all about. That was the end goal behind everything that we did. We wanted to see transformation happen in lives. We wanted a hope beyond dismal circumstances or rough things that people were carrying, or a rough week they would come into our church doors and they would come in not leaving the same person, because they found a renewal and hope. They found a refreshing. They just found they felt more connected to God because they put aside their distractions and experienced that. And so it was this journey for quite a few months of saying, okay, well, what is my job? Because I'm just an admin person at that time. But my experiences were growing, and there was something that shifted once I made this shift. I started owning tasks differently. I started serving out of this hope, not just because it was my job description or putting boundaries around that, but I became freer and more confident, because I would start saying, oh, well, people matter. I want people to know they're valued and matter, and that they have a place to belong, because when they experience those things, they can settle in and they feel safe to receive what these bigger things, bigger messages that God has for them. And so I would think, well, I clean up databases. I would track movements of steps people would take to connect to their next step in, say, a group, and stay a volunteer role, or who do they need to talk to about this thing. I did a lot of connecting with that, and then to do that, I would have to keep databases up to date and orderly, and pester other staff members who didn't have that same mindset. They were busy doing other things and creating programs or experiences or caring for people, and I would say, well, I need you to write that down. I need you to update that name, or you find out they moved, I need you to update that, because we can't care for people properly if we don't know who they are, if we don't remember who's who and what they've been, so what they could do next. How do we be more intentional? And so all of a sudden there is this mission behind why I did what I did. Creating a church bulletin at the time that I did that. This was years and years ago. It was to keep people informed, and if they knew what was happening, they knew what next step to take to feel connected and part of the church family. If they didn't feel informed, they didn't always reach out and find that information themselves. So this was, again, years and years ago in what I did. But when I found this ownership behind what that I did, this is why I do this role, then I had way more confidence. So that served me for a number of years. And here's the thing, when you're crafting your statement, if you want to craft your statement, it doesn't just have to be one statement, because depending on who I talk to, I answer differently in a different context. Some people wanted to know the heart behind what I did. They were at a different connection point, or they would want to know, you could do this role. You could take this leadership position. You've done enough of, say, group leadership leading that you could do this. Why don't you apply for this role? And I would say, actually, I don't really want that role. I love what I do, and I love supporting the person in leadership. And so I was like, oh, hint, I love supporting others in leadership and equipping them with the environment and the organization so they can do the leading, and I help make it better. And that would be oh, hey, I just recognized that about myself. And so my answer might shift depending. If it was to a leader of leaders, I would answer a differently in what my mission was than if it was someone that was just new to the church, to the environment, and I was just helping them learn their first few steps. And so this is your tip too. If you tend to be a perfectionist or an overthinker, and you're thinking, okay, of all of the words out there in the English language, how do I pick the ones that succinctly describe this, right? And we can easily get caught up in perfectionism and overthinking and wonder what is going on and how do I nail this down? And so you don't have to overthink it. It's constantly, treat it like a statement in progress. It's a working statement, and you can shift it and change it, not drastically, but try it out on people and see how it feels, see how it rolls off. Because it's one thing to remember a bunch of memorized words. That won't mean the same as when it comes from your heart, as you're realizing, no, this is what I'm about. This is why I do what I do, and it just flows from your heart when you're in conversation. And that's the part that you want, right? That's where confidence comes, is when you've owned it inside. And sure, you can practice the words so they roll out and so you don't sound hesitant. You can do that, but confidence comes when you've owned it from the heart and you recognize the value that you offer people, whether it's exactly what your job description says or not. And so this is different on, this isn't the statement I would put on government forms. They just want to know I do admin, and they would always feel cheated when I'd have to put that on a form. Or they just want to know, leader isn't really a role, right, you would put on it. They just want to know what category do you fit in. And so, yeah, sometimes you got to answer that way. But when you're talking and expressing your heart or the direction that you want to go or what you're all about and how you help people, then this is where we go. But it doesn't have to stay there. So what happens when you want to switch roles? What happens when you want to switch your career? Or what happens when you're in a new phase, or maybe you're stepping from career to retirement and you want a more fulfilling statement than saying, oh, I'm retired? Because that doesn't really sum up all you're about either, right? Or what if you've stepped out of a career and that was fulfilling and you were alive to be a stay-at-home mom or to homeschool your kids, or you have to step back from what you were doing that had this solid acknowledgement and affirmation behind it, because people knew, oh, you do this. Oh, cool. Like that seems to have some status to it. It's different, right? How do you not be apologetic about this stepping back just because it doesn't seem as significant or as tidy in a category or role? And this is where you can step into the purpose statement. So you have your mission statement. This is what I do. And you could say, because it involves less explaining, right? To say I'm a homeschool mom, but knowing that's not all you do. And so it's, why do you do? What are the things that you are about? Your purpose. And so, you could say your mission statement. If you want to write this down, here's your code. I help so-and-so do, solve, find, discover, experience this. And you could, the problem or the challenge that they want to overcome. And you add a layer of purpose to that, which is so that. Why do you do that role? It's so that. So it could be that I do this job so that my kids have maybe you've chosen a job for now because it has the hours that you can be home with your kids. You can pick them up from school, or so that you can actually flex it and you can homeschool them and you tag team parenting or something like that. So you could say, I do this so that, and you talk about what is the greater purpose behind that, so that my kids feel loved and secure at home, so they know that I'm right there with them. Or it could be so that I have space to work on this thing, or volunteer in this area, or meet with these women for coffee, because that's ultimately what I love to do. So what is your so that? And write that in the comments. What's your so that? What is your role or task or mission? And then what is your so that? And then, do you want to know the 5th level that you can add? And this isn't necessarily the answer you might give in a normal, just a regular everyday conversation. It would be say the introverted, deeper conversation. If people are intrigued by what you say, maybe you go into a layer. And then if you're the introvert that is not a fan of small talk, or you just want to take a conversation to a level and you're like, what, I don't want to talk about, I'm in between jobs right now, and and you feel apologetic, and you're just tired of people asking, like, yes, I've applied, or yes, no, I haven't had interviews, right? That gets draining and frustrating if you're constantly feeling like you're reporting to someone if you're in between jobs. And so when you have a mission or purpose, this is what I'm about. And so your role or your job is going to fit into that mission in some way or other. You can still confidently answer that. The calling statement is what takes it deeper, and that's the because. So I help these people so that, and it's kind of the impact you want to make on them, the outcome that you want to have. But the calling is because, and so it's a layer deeper. And this could be why, this could explain why you are the one that feels called to own that role. Maybe it's because I'm the mother God's given me and I want to make the most of these years. Or it could be because God has called me to use my gifts to help these kinds of people in this situation because I went through this. So for a while, mine was, I had this purpose to say that I help, I don't think I actually, now that I think of it, put it into a purpose. But there was a season where I connected with people who were married or separated because I'd just gone through a separation. And I knew the pain and the turmoil and just the awfulness of going through that season. The stress, the unknown, the identity, grappling. And so I really felt connected to reach out and help those people get connected into a place where they could feel belonging and feel safe and walk through their own journey without judgment, with lots of grace. And so that's what, that was my calling for a while. I helped people find sense of belonging so that they would feel secure, they would feel valued, so that they would be able to be more connected to God and heal from their pain, because I had been through the same thing and I didn't want that experience wasted. So, does that make sense to you? I would love to know in the comments, if you're watching this training, where does this connect with you? Which of these 5 levels, task, role, mission, purpose, calling, which of those statements do you feel like you need to do some thinking and working around? Drop that in the comments. Let me know. And if you need support around this, and I'm telling you, it does make a difference when you can confidently do this. If you are in transition, or if you realize you've expanded your dream and you need to get clear again to be able to say that. It can be challenging figuring out these words on your own. There's lots of second guessing. There's lots of word options. How do you figure that out? I love that kind of thing. And so if you want to get clear on that, then send me a private message or comment below, or book a clarity call with me. Tell me your situation and let's get you clear on that for your specific, unique situation. And you can book a clarity call with me at emilygrabatin.ca/clarity call. So I hope you have a great week. Let me know how this has helped you. Give me a high five below, and have a fantastic day.